It's Saturday morning at 10 a.m., so you know what that means. It's time for What's Up, Ocala? With tens of thousands of viewers every month on our YouTube channel and millions so far on TikTok, we are joined by our host, local owner, and broker of Great Expectations Realty, Andrea Praber.
Good morning and welcome to What's Up, Ocala. I'm your host, Andrea Praber, and today, well, if you're tuning in, you've probably got the recent hurricane on your mind. Once again, Ocala seems to have had a bit of a magic shield. We watched, we prepared, but in the end, we stayed safe and dry for the most part. It's something we kind of all joke about when we're living here. Hurricanes, not us, not today. But I know it was still nerve-wracking for a lot of you, especially with all the news and updates coming in. And rest assured, they definitely play it up when they're doing the weather. I mean, whoever thought that the Weather Channel or the meteorologist was going to be the most exciting thing on TV, and then we were all be on the edge of our seat for days at a time. It's basically their time to shine, and they definitely do it. So, in fact, one of the Weather Channel's most famous people, Jim Cantore, he's basically a Florida legend. You know, if he hits the airport, we're all freaking out. There's a lot of jokes about it and stuff like that. But really, we all know what he looks like because we watch him for days on end, along with a lot of the other weather personalities on Fox and on the Weather Channel itself. So today, we are going to go ahead and chat about why Ocala always seems to stay safe during the storms and how we can stay prepared. Let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit. Ocala tends to avoid the worst of these storms. Why? Is it just a fluke? What's going on with this? Well, Ocala's location plays a big part in our hurricane luck. We're inland, we're shielded by nature, and surrounded by higher ground. Meteorologists often point out how these storms lose strength as they make landfall, especially when they hit from the Gulf Coast. By the time they get to us, they're basically a shell of what they were. So to put it into perspective, the actual mandatory evacuation orders that were given to Tampa and Sarasota and so forth, well, they were told to travel inland to safety by just 20 miles. It wasn't an evacuation order to go out of state or something like that. Many of them did, but that actually wasn't the evacuation order. The evacuation order was telling them they would be safe if they just moved 20 miles away from the coast. Ocala sits about 75 miles from the nearest coastline. That distance makes a huge difference when a hurricane is barreling towards us. And for those of you wondering about the future, yes, the experts say Ocala will remain one of the safer spots in Florida for years to come, despite the much more turbulent weather we've seen lately. Not all parts of Florida are equally at risk of natural disasters, as you can already see. Last year, the Wall Street Journal asked Climate Alpha A. It's a company that uses AI to build forecasting models based on data from FEMA. And it's related to past events, predictions of future weather. It's got an analysis of local government disaster policies, infrastructure, all that stuff, including hospital beds to come up with. Basically, they want to come up with a list of areas in Florida with the least combined risk from hurricanes, flooding, and strong winds. Because that storm surge, I know, 10 years ago, nobody ever heard of storm surge. Storm surge? What in the world? What's that? Now it's storm surge this and storm surge that, and we're all worried about storm surge, which we can't even get in Ocala. The winner from that Wall Street Journal question, the winner for the lowest risk of coastal flooding is Ocala. It's located in the center of the state. It's 82 miles from Orlando, 97 miles from Tampa. According to Climate Alpha, when accounting for a combination of high winds, drought, and inland flooding, Ocala comes in third in the state behind Lake City and Tallahassee. In fact, Ocala's risk for inland flooding is lower than both of those cities. So that's how it came up on top. Earlier this week, Governor Ron DeSantis was actually in Ocala to provide an update on Florida's preparations for Hurricane Milton. He shared that the Florida Division of Emergency Management had completed nearly 12,000 tasks to get ready for the storm. They had flood protection devices that were deployed. 1.2 million gallons of fuel were on the way to the state since all of us decided to put a bunch of gas in our cars and everybody else's cars and the lawn and possibly more. I don't know. It was all gone. Well, Governor DeSantis and other officials had urged residents in the storm path to evacuate as soon as possible. And then shoulder lanes on I-4 and I-75 were opened up to help with the increased traffic. I'm sure if you had to travel anywhere in the last week, you definitely noticed that it was almost impossible to get back to Ocala. Again, that's because people were told to evacuate, and most of them evacuated going north, and a lot of them evacuated to Ocala. I know for our company, we have short-term rentals that we manage, and the short-term rentals were booked up. All except for the river retreat. For some unknown reason, nobody wanted to be close to a river this week, but everything else was booked up. I know the hotels in town were booked up. A lot of the people that were evacuating from Tampa and from Sarasota and from Venice, all of that, actually, a lot of them, they ended up in Ocala. So again, a lot of us are like, we need to evacuate. The only ones in Ocala that were asked to evacuate were those that were in structures that were not site-built homes. There was also a little bit of a miscommunication, apparently through the county and the sheriff's department. I'm not really sure who started it, but there was something about houses before 1994 not necessarily being safe and that they needed to evacuate those. That actually was not true. The mayor went on to Facebook saying, no, that was never part of it. There's nothing wrong with houses before 1994. And truthfully, that would be true possibly down in like Miami area, because prior to 1994, there were some different building construction codes that happened. But it doesn't really apply anymore because when you get like a new roof or something like that, they have to go by the current codes. So unless your house was prior to 1994 and you've never put a new roof on it, that would be pretty amazing. But if that happens, then maybe, possibly, because it wouldn't be built to current code standards. I'm not really sure what the house would look like if it was built prior to 1994 and had never had a roof replacement, though, so I'm not really sure that they're worried about building standards. I'm not sure. Anyway, what happened in 1992 is, of course, Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew changed everything as far as building codes in South Florida, and then also the entire state of Florida. So from 1994, building codes in South Florida changed, but it was only affecting South Florida. And then in 2002, that's the year that's actually important for Marion County because that's when the building codes actually changed for the rest of the state. So Marion County, of course, not being part of South Florida, 1994 had little to nothing to do with Marion County at all. That is a South Florida time frame. So in 2002, we actually had our building code changed. But again, from 2002 to now, that's 22 years. Chances are you've probably had a re-roof done at that point too. And a lot of the builders were actually, and roofers were actually already, they knew that the code was going to change. And a lot of them had already started using the South Florida building code for, the roofing and stuff. And the anchoring and so forth that they put in there and all of that stuff. So it is something to check, but that's also why when you have a roof from prior to 2002, you may have an even harder time getting insurance on your home. It's because that roof was put on to prior building code and standards and it's not as likely to stand up in a hurricane. So hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, the 1994 thing, I don't know exactly who started that rumor. Somebody I believe in Marion County did. because that's the first place I saw it was 1994. And I'm like, that really doesn't make sense, but it's written from the county, so I guess. But yeah, that it really had nothing to do with Marion County at all. It looked like somebody maybe copied and pasted something from South Florida. I'm not really sure. But either way, it was basically for non-site built homes. That would be RVs, manufactured homes, mobile homes, stuff like that. And truthfully, anytime that there's a really bad storm coming anywhere remotely near us, that's who they normally ask to go and stay with a friend or a family member, or worst case, go ahead and go into one of the shelters, because that building structure is not as anchored to the ground as a site-built home would be. You know, it doesn't have a concrete pad that is actually attached to the property. Even if it's sitting on a concrete pad, that's basically not that much better than just sitting in your car. And in fact, in Florida, at least in Marion County, if you are in a manufactured home, mobile home, that is actually a vehicle. That's why you have to have tags registered to it. It is actually considered a vehicle in the state of Florida, not a house. A house would be site built only. So a little bit of interesting facts for you as far as building codes and stuff. I could go on and on with that. Some of the fallacies that they have with building codes and some of the rumors that became not just rumors and urban myths, I guess. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff that goes crazy with building codes. But we did see that. Now, okay, in Marion County, we had an evacuation for these non-site built homes, RVs, stuff like that. That we definitely had. But truthfully, that's really just a better safe than sorry kind of mentality, because we were going to get some high winds. Now, if you had have noticed on that map that they had on almost every channel of all the high winds that were hitting once the storm was making landfall and actually had made landfall, you notice that Marion County and Ocala actually had some of the least amount of winds in the entire state. So even if Sanford was getting hit with, I don't know, I think I saw 60 mile per hour winds over there, Ocala had like 22. So even as much wind as we got, that was nothing compared to the rest of the state. There was a lot of high wind with Milton, and that's what they were worried about, was a lot of that damage. So we still do get high winds here, of course. Now, if you're on a evacuation and if you are leaving, again, it's only about 20 miles away from the coast. So if you're in Ocala, you're not going to be anywhere near that deadly storm surge. Hopefully we're far enough away from the coast as well that we're going to miss a lot of the tornadoes and stuff that they had down south as well. So, of course we can get that, but it's just not nearly as likely. And if you think that, well, okay, so I'm just not going to live in Florida. Well, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, they probably never thought that they would have hurricanes up there either, but they definitely did with Helene. Helene was a shining example of plan for the worst, because it could happen. So kind of interesting with that. All right. We were told through this AI from the Wall Street Journal that Ocala is the safest bet. All right. I asked ChatGPT because, if they can ask them, why can't I? So I went ahead and asked the AI that I'm most comfortable with. And I asked, if you're on the coast of Florida and need to evacuate ahead of a hurricane, where should you go? So here's what ChatGPT, or as I call her, Chatty. Yes, I think of it as a her because you can ask her anything you want and she has all the answers. So of course it's a woman, right? All right. Here's what she had to say. Move inland. The safest bet is to move well away from the coast, head to areas further inland, such as, here we go, Ocala. That's it. First place she mentioned, Gainesville or Lake City. So Lake City was third on her list. These areas are less likely to experience the direct impacts of storm surge and high winds, and they tend to be safer from the worst of the flooding. All right, Central Florida, cities like Orlando or Claremont also offer good options. Central Florida is typically less vulnerable to hurricanes compared to coastal areas. Well, of course. If time allows and the storm is expected to be particularly severe, you may want to evacuate to neighboring states such as Georgia or Alabama. Both are within a few hours' drive from most parts of Florida and can offer more distance from the storm's potential impact. You would also want to stay with friends or family. If you have family or friends inland or in other states, consider staying with them. It's often a lot more comfortable and reliable option than crowded shelters or hotels. Also, plan your route ahead of time. Use major highways like I-75 or I-95, but be prepared for heavy traffic. Florida often opens up emergency shoulder lanes during evacuations to help with traffic flow, which, yes, they did. Gas up and pack essentials. Ensure your car has a full tank of gas and bring essential supplies like food, water, medicine, and important documents, since services may be limited during an evacuation or a storm. And she even gave us a bonus tip: evacuate early. We all saw that. We saw the traffic get worse and worse, and we saw the panic set in. Evacuate early, she says. The earlier you leave, the better chance you have of avoiding gridlock on the highways and finding accommodations before they fill up. Considering that ChatGPT is essentially an updated modern Google that takes all the info from a search and puts it into a conversational model, I asked her where she got this combination from. She said, I gather information from a combination of reliable, well-established sources, including government agencies, emergency management resources, and general knowledge about hurricane preparedness and evacuation best practices. Some common sources for this kind of information that I used was Florida Division of Emergency Management, FDEM. They provide evacuation routes, shelter locations, and updates on storm preparations and responses. Of course, the National Hurricane Center, FEMA, and local emergency management offices. Each county in Florida has its own emergency management office that offers specific shelter information, evacuation routes, and storm preparedness guides. Also, general knowledge and geography. Central Florida inland areas like Ocala, Gainesville, and Orlando are commonly recommended for evacuation due to their distance from the coast and reduced hurricane impact risk. So basically, the government, AI, and public general knowledge all agree that Ocala is the safest location in Florida for hurricanes. Good to know. Now, I want to hear from you. How many hurricanes have you personally seen come and go without ever touching down here in Ocala? Go ahead and jump onto the Facebook page for Classic Hits Ocala and go ahead and let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are. One other thing I want to go over is preparing for the next one. Oh yeah, I know. I have no idea when the next one will hit, if it'll hit Florida at all, but there will be a next one. It's Florida. Of course, we're going to have another hurricane eventually. Even though we've been very fortunate, it's still smart to be prepared. So let's go over some of those simple ways to make sure you and your family are ready for any storm, anytime. First off, it's the little things like stocking up on the non-perishable food, bottled water, and flashlights that can make a huge difference. And I have to tell you, I had a little bit of a panic attack this week because, of course, I had all of the canned goods and I had all of the flashlights and the bottled water and the stuff, had all of that stuff. I always have it on hand. And then I realized I did not have a can opener. That's right. My can opener had broken and I mean, it was a few months ago and I just didn't even think to replace it. I have an electric can opener and a lot of the cans now are pop tops. So I just didn't even think about it. Thankfully, before I freaked out too bad, I remembered that I actually keep a can opener, a manual can opener, good old trusty manual can opener in my camping supplies in my garage. So, because I absolutely love going camping and sometimes there's no electricity in the places I go camping. So thankfully we did have that, but yeah, I could not believe that I had actually forgotten something like that. So when you make your list, go ahead and make a very thorough list, such as if you're going to have canned goods, make sure you can open them. I can't even imagine how in the world I would have gotten into it. Trust me, I would not let my family starve. I would make sure we would have gotten into the cans somehow, but it would have been very messy and probably traumatic for all of us. Okay. Let's see. I did go ahead also and buy a whole bunch of snacks. And I have to say that we had enough chips to feed an army, but we only had one flashlight, so figure that one out. So maybe if I should have bought more flashlights and less cherry sours and Doritos, we probably would have been a little bit better off. But we have a ton of candles because I love the smell good candles. So our house was very, very, very smelly as far as like one room it smelled like cookies, another room it smelled like lemon. But the whole house smelled great, and we had plenty of light with that anyway. So, all right, local vendor spotlight. If you need any supplies, don't forget to check out some of our local hardware stores. We've got some amazing folks here in Ocala who've been through the drill before. They can help you get set up with generators, batteries, everything you need. So check into some of these smaller local hardware stores because they are very likely to help you with a list and help you pick out the stuff that you need and go over it all with you. All right. Again, I would love to hear from you. What are some of the things you forgot until the last minute, or what are some of your hurricane prep go-to? Go ahead and jump on our Facebook page. That's at Classic Hits Ocala. So I would love to hear from you. What is your hurricane prep go-to? Let me know. What are some of the things that you totally forgot and were just sitting there going, really? You know, like candles without a lighter, stuff like that. Like share your funniest prep fail with us. I would love to hear about it. You can go on to the Facebook page at Classic Hits Ocala, or you can go ahead and hit up ours, which is Great Expectations Realty. So Facebook, Great Expectations Realty. Let us know. Let me know what you forgot or what you had too much of and not enough of or whatever. Okay, let's go ahead and hear one of the anecdotes that an Ocala resident told me. They actually had their family on full-on hurricane drill only for the storm to turn, of course, at the last minute. They were stocked, they were locked in the house, ready to go. And then basically the sun came out. I mean, like, we really didn't have much. So, yeah, if you are all prepped and ready to go, like for me, I had candles going all over the place because I thought for sure we would lose electricity. It did not even flicker. I'm not kidding. We never lost electricity even. And there was some pretty strong wind, or at least for Ocala anyway. Okay, big shout out to the utility workers, first responders, and local volunteers who always stand ready during these storms, whether we get hit or not. We really love that we can count on you guys to be prepared. Ocala truly appreciates you, okay? Everybody that's sitting in the dark right now, they would really appreciate you to go and fix their electric. We know you guys are working like 24/7. We greatly appreciate it. All of the first responders, I'm sure it's very frustrating when you've got somebody in a house that you know is not safe and you're trying to get them to leave and they're just as sure that they're not going to leave. Like all of that stuff, all of this stuff. We really appreciate you guys. We really do. All right. In Florida, I know we tend to find humor in everything, including hurricanes. There's a whole slew of memes out there. I mean, every hurricane is like, who has the best hurricane Florida memes? But I saw one that was pretty funny. It was like this Floridian. They're sitting there with their beer and they're basically weathering this massive storm and they're sitting there just chilling like they're watching a sports game. And it honestly feels that way sometimes, right? I mean, we're just kind of like, okay, here's another one. Let's go ahead and talk about some of those must-haves that are absolutely essential. I did mention beer, but there's also, an extra stash of cookies, an inflatable pool for the backyard just in case it floods, or I don't know, one neighbor always insists on grilling during the eye of the storm. It's just kind of craziness, but I don't know. What's your guilty pleasure during hurricane season? Me personally, I really miss the hurricane cakes at Publix. I know everybody said it wasn't funny and we shouldn't be using such dark humor, but personally, I thought it was hilarious. I loved them and I was really sad that they don't have them anymore. All right, as always, Ocala, we've come out of this storm unscathed, but it's never a bad idea to stay prepared. Whether it's making your emergency kit, making sure it's in good shape, making sure that your clothes are clothes that still fit currently. If you haven't looked at it in like 5 years, you might want to get up on that. Just a little planning goes a long way. Remember, hurricane season is not over. Let's hope that our luck holds up, but just in case it doesn't, be prepared for anything, and hopefully it doesn't happen. If you're looking for more information on hurricane preparedness, don't hesitate to visit our local emergency management website. And as always, keep your radio tuned in to Classic Hits Ocala, which is 104.7 for the latest updates. And hopefully we'll all keep you informed as well as entertained. Next week, we're going to be talking about what makes Ocala such a special place to live, aside from dodging hurricanes. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
You've been listening to What's Up, Ocala? Follow us all week on Andrea Praber's YouTube channel and TikTok. We'll see you next week at 10 a.m. on What's Up, Ocala.